Beep, 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 beep. All that's new and approved from Jester News. Hello, you. How are we, good people? All the usual. Subscribe, send me a coffee, become a warrior teacher, blah, blah. Usual stuff, straight as down the line, right? I covered a bit about Gillian Keegan, who is the Secretary of State for Education, recently after her disastrous performance in front of Miriam Cates. So it's interesting, and really just a very quick one today, to point you towards an article from Spiked online, which has a number of interesting links in it, all of which I have placed into the Dewberries downstairs. So here we go. Let's have a look and see what Spike's had to say about it, because I think the title alone is enough to raise the ire of the anti-science nutters that we're dealing with. Meets the Secretary of State for trans indoctrination. Brilliant. Brilliant, see? Incisive. Yep, there. There is growing concern among parents and teachers about the ideological nature of what is being taught in British schools. Do you think? Right? They are worried that children, some as young as 5, are being subjected to lessons, and subjected is the word, right? Subjected is the word, to lessons in contentious subjects. I'd go farther than that. They're being subjected to lessons in nonsense. These lessons include such things as gender fluidity, which was somebody asked me the other day, what do you do with a child that's gender fluid? So dry them off and give them a biscuit, right? And also not just gender fluidity, but funny enough, structural racism. Strange that, no? Those two. Unfortunately, says Spiked, it doesn't look as if Gillian Keegan, the Secretary of State for Education, shares their concerns. It certainly does not. Now, there's a number of things that have happened as a result of our meeting with Miriam Cates, not least of which is Pink News has discovered to have praised her appointment in October. Don't give them money, don't go there. Right, it describes her as a rare LGBTQ plus ally. She's no ally to me, and I'm a gay man. Now that should, if Pink News have said this, then that should set your alarm bells ringing automatically, because they simply are the mouthpiece of a disgusting ideological framework. So that should have set your old, ding, 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 right, Pink News. So, because that, as they say in the Spiked article, is a news outlet that has unashamedly promoted transgender ideology for several years now, to the detriment of its original core audience of gay men and lesbians, any of whom, who have anything to do with Pink News or believing anything they write, want their head examined. But you can see that, why they'd be happy with Keegan, because as Education Secretary, because in 2020, as has been revealed here by Spike, she sent a letter to the Chichester LGBT Forum in which she unequivocally declared that trans women are women. Come on, Sunak, sack her. Get her gone. She should be nowhere near education. They then draw us back to the video of her being, questioned by Miriam, which I think they're saying is the most worrying aspect of what we've seen so far, and I would agree with them on that particular idea. Miriam Cates drew attention to recent YouGov polling, which finds that 75% of children have been exposed to critical social justice theories in school. 75%. Right, well, you've got to remember, when they say exposed, we need to understand what they mean by exposed. Because the teachers aren't exposing them to the theory. The teachers are practicing the theory. That's what you've got to be careful of. There's a difference between exposure and practicing. You can teach about Catholicism, you can teach about Islam, you can teach about Zoroastrianism if you want to. Don't practice it in the classroom, eh? Let's not practice it. These people are practicing it. That's what we're worried about. 68% of that 75%, this shows you they're practicing it, reported being taught that such theories are fact. Fact. And that alternative views are not acceptable. Alternative views are not acceptable. Her initial response to Cates was to dismiss the existence of any problem. And then when Miriam pointed out that teaching children such contested theories as fact amounted to indoctrination, which of course is illegal, we know this because it's illegal in law to indoctrinate children, Keegan acted bemused and asked rhetorically, is it indoctrination though? Well, I would say that is the response of somebody who is an indoctrinator. That shouldn't be a response. It's a safeguarding concern. Her response should be, this needs investigating fully. It's a safeguarding concern. Telling 5-year-olds they're born in the wrong body is a safeguarding concern. Right? Giving them an ideology that will lead them to sterilisation and medication and mutilation is a safeguarding issue. Come on, Sunak, fire her. Conservative MP Caroline Ansell said she had spoken to teachers who were concerned about what they were being asked to teach at school. She also told the story of a grandfather whose 5-year-old grandson came home one day and told him they had been taught about being born in the wrong body. If they're born in the wrong body, where's the other one? I keep saying it. Again, Keegan was dismissive. She claimed she had not seen or heard anything like this herself. That's the blinders of the ideologue. Well, I haven't seen it, therefore it's not happening. Ostrich. Blinders of the ideologue. And she said that about when she's been in schools. She doesn't think it's happening. As for teachers worried about what they've been asked to teach, Keegan denied there was an issue. I have not found any problem with freedom of speech from any of the teachers I mix with as a constituency MP. The issue is not freedom of speech. The issue is safeguarding. The issue is not freedom of speech because they're being allowed to do it. If they're practicing it, 68% being taught fact. They're practicing these critical social justice theories in school. So where's the problem with freedom of speech? The problem is not freedom of speech, right? People might not be able to stop them. They're not able to speak and say, don't do this. This is not an issue of freedom of speech. This is an issue of the protection of children. The protection of children from dangerous, divisive, power and oppression mad ideologues, right? You want to do your damn job, Keegan? Get in there and fire every teacher that's doing it. And stop fanning about, right? In effect, Keegan was denying there is any problem with the ideological nature of what is being taught in schools right now, despite the polling, and also a recent policy exchange report. All of the links you'll find in the Spiked article. I have not seen the report, said Keegan, after Kate drew her attention to the policy exchange report. Before adding, and here's the bit that should chill you to the bone, because it certainly chills me to the bone. I have not seen the report, said Keegan. Before adding, there are sides of this debate that have skin in the game, so I will look at the level of concern that is being raised. She's both siding. I will look at the level of concern. Looking for a bit of balance there, are we, Keegan, in your flaccid liberal mindset? Looking for a bit... There is no balance. There is no balance. They are the enemy. This is the enemy. The ideology is the enemy. The theories being practiced are the enemy, Keegan. You know, Gillian, get your finger out your backside and do something. Okay? This is not two sides. This is not two sides. This is an anti-liberal, anti-Western, anti-science, anti-reality, anti-human cult. There are not two sides. You do not communicate and find balance with a parasite. Put your finger out your arse. They end. In other words, Keegan seems to believe that any report or evidence claiming to show there is a problem in schools right now is a product of vested interest and a product of prejudice. So I have to ask myself, Gillian Keegan, whether you're a cultist, a full-on cultist, whether you're an acolyte of the cultists, or whether you're an adherent. I ask myself that question because I find it interesting to sit and talk about those things, because you're worried about people that have skin in the game. What's the game, Gillian? Describe the board for me. Describe the board. What's the game, Gillian? You haven't explained what the game is. What, you mean the game of harming children? Yep. The game of pretending that we haven't built a fantastic society. The game of pretending everybody's racist. The game of introducing foul American ideas into our education system to corrupt the youth and make them activists. Explain the game, Gillian. She thinks it's all about prejudice. It's about the game. There's a skin in the game, two sides, right? So she's both siding. Which is ironic, considering that she wrote a letter saying trans women are women, and she seems to find no problem whatsoever in her spouting the rhetoric of the cult. In which case, if she's spouting the rhetoric of the cult, she thinks that anyone that comes up with an alternative has got skin in the game and therefore is prejudiced or is biased, then what we are dealing with here is a full-on cultist. A full-on cultist. And by that I mean a true believer. Gillian Keegan, the true believer. Am I right, Gillian? Is that what you are, a true believer? Gendered souls? The inherent badness of whiteness? The original sin of racism written across every 5-year-old child? Because if that's the case, you are a disgusting human being. A disgusting and vile human being. That's what you are. Okay? Or have you just been caught up in it, like a lot of other good people? Either way, I want to know. I want to know whether you're caught up in it because you're a good person who's gone wrong, or whether you're caught up in it because you know exactly what you're doing, in which case you're a cultist, and I want to know what the game board looks like. Perhaps you'd like to take the time to explain that. Go well, good people.